I'm going to say something that I know will not be a very popular take. I genuinely like Mafia 3. I believe it has very interesting and often surprisingly smart design ideas in terms of infusing its game's recognizable open world structure with a Mafia-themed maturity. The gameplay is by a long shot the best of the series, and it reinvents a ton of systems we've come to expect as series staples in a very logical and period-appropriate way. Like the way guns are purchased, or in this case delivered to you, or how within the underboss system your allies can actually betray you as a result of your own choices. Despite one major flaw that will justifiably put some people off, this game has a great revenge story that somehow manages not to feel cliché, actually using the racial tensions in the city of New Bordeaux to enhance not only the revenge plot, but to motivate the entire city takeover in a very meaningful and often rewarding way. Mafia 3 deserved a lot of the hate it got at launch. The technical state of the game was abysmal, the console and PC ports were nearly unplayable, and the constant bugs completely ruined any shred of immersion. I tried the game back in 2016 and simultaneously vowed to never touch it again after only a few hours. I was convinced that Hangar 13 didn't know how to make a good Mafia game, and that the open world design could never work for a series that built its foundation on strong narrative-focused linearity. It wasn't until this retrospective series that I finally gave Mafia 3 another chance, free from the technical problems that made it nearly impossible to review the game objectively and free from the pressures of my own expectations. The perception of Mafia 3 will be forever tainted due to its release date, but I'm very pleased to say that revisiting this game 9 years since its release, I found a whole lot more to like than I ever expected. So in this investigation, we will be looking at the highs of Mafia 3, the lows of Mafia 3, and why I really think, with all its flaws, Mafia 3 is still worthy of the Mafia name. This is Mafia 3 9 years later. The development of Mafia 3 began in a very difficult period for the franchise. After Mafia 2's underwhelming commercial performance and internal restructuring after Take-Two's acquisition of Illusion Softworks, the project faced a real uncertain future. The original plans to build on Mafia's classic style were shelved as the team worked through creative disagreements and frequent project resets. In 2012, Take-Two decided to create a new studio, Hangar 13, to bring a fresh energy to the series. Hayden Blackman was also brought in to lead the project, aiming to craft a story unlike anything in the previous games. This new direction centered around Lincoln Clay, a Vietnam War veteran and African American, fighting to dismantle a corrupt mob empire in a fictional city inspired by 1960s New Orleans. This was a bold move not just for the series but the gaming industry as a whole, as it aimed to explore racial discrimination and civil rights within the gaming narrative in an almost disturbingly real way, something that really hadn't ever been done to the extent that they were planning. The team faced major technical challenges, especially with the now aging Illusion engine, which had to be heavily reworked to function in a next-generation open-world context. Meanwhile, the pressure to meet deadlines led to repeated project resets, reducing much of the ambitious content originally planned and forcing the team to cut features just to get close to the release date window. Despite these obstacles, Mafia 3 was finally released on the 7th of October 2016 to very disappointing critical reception and ultimately divided the fanbase on day one. Repetitive gameplay where players constantly rinsed and repeated similar missions, numerous technical bugs, and graphical shortcomings that already aged poorly even at launch. It's a very strange pattern that these Mafia games from Hangar 13 release in the state that they do, because it ultimately damages the long-term image of not only the studio, but the franchise. Years later, the Mafia remake also released with a multitude of bugs, and all the definitive editions still suffer from major technical problems that still persist till this day. I truly hope that Mafia the Old Country marks the beginning of a polished release cadence from Hangar 13, but only time will tell. Today though, the conversation around Mafia 3 is luckily a little more nuanced than just Mafia 3 bad, but the broader sentiment still remains negative. So I'm very clearly an outlier when it comes to liking this game, but one thing that most people do seem to agree on is that Mafia 3's story is pretty darn good. This story. Mafia 3's story follows Lincoln Clay, a war veteran returning home from Vietnam to New Bordeaux. Lincoln then reunites with his adopted family who are running a small criminal operation called the Black Mob. The The opening, although jam-packed with major things happening like the bank heist, is so emotionally charged. In a very small span of time, the writers and actors truly managed to get you to care for Lincoln's family and the community that they are surrounded by. Sammy Robinson, Lincoln's adopted father, although still a criminal, manages to come across as a real gentleman. He cares for the black community and he deeply cares for Lincoln. Then there's Ellis, Lincoln's adopted brother, who is another example of the excellent writing in this game. In a span of a short car ride, you learn almost everything about him, the deep bond him and Lincoln share with one another, the drugs Ellis wants to sell, and how the Haitian mob have put Sammy, their father, in debt with Sal Marcano. The setup for this story is brilliant. You've been shown in a very non-linear fashion that a bank heist does take place. The story then rewinds a little earlier to Lincoln returning home, finding Sammy in debt, which then leads to you meeting with Sal Marcano, where he suggests that Lincoln takes over as the head of the black mob. Lincoln then, loyal to a fault, refuses to betray his adopted father, and in that moment, it does seem as though Sal Marcano respects that choice. Sal Marcano then wants Lincoln to help him and Georgie with a bank heist, and in return, the debt Sammy owes is settled. The story is simultaneously told in a linear way, but also in retrospect, due to the nature of the documentary style they're going for, which I absolutely loved. The way they interweave these almost Netflix crime docu-style interviews, filmed technically after the events of Mafia III, usually used to show either more context from that particular character's perspective, or to set up something that is eventually going to happen. Like at the start of the game where Father James is being interviewed and he ends his interview with "It's a shame what happened."
It's a damn shame what happened. It breaks my heart.
Effectively creating intrigue and suspense for the events to come. Or like when Danny Burke, one of Ellis's friends, joins the heist crew after being told to do so by his father, Thomas Burke. His sister is then interviewed years after the events of Mafia III, and she reveals that he somehow dies during the heist.
It's his fault Danny died.
Despite not actually knowing how it all plays out, you know he dies. The stakes are immediately raised and your expectations firmly set for what's to come. I absolutely love this form of storytelling throughout the narrative. It gives you deeper appreciation for certain characters like Father James that never fully revealed what he felt during the actual events of Mafia 3. But now that he is older, has the wisdom to articulate his true feelings in retrospect for this documentary. I especially loved when it gets used to subvert our expectations. The best example of this is the first major plot twist and setup for the overall revenge narrative that Lincoln goes on, that I somehow managed to completely forget was going to happen. The way people being interviewed talk about the events that transpired during the heist make it seem as though the bank heist goes completely wrong, so you as the player are consistently on guard for when things eventually go south, or patiently waiting for when Danny dies, not realizing that what goes wrong has nothing to do with the bank heist. There are a couple of hiccups, police chases and close calls, but they somehow manage to pull it off. The gang all celebrate together at Sammy's bar. They've accomplished the impossible together, stealing well over $2 million. Sal Marcano then joins the festivities, and that's when he gives Georgie this devastating look. What follows is one of the most gruesome and gut-wrenching betrayals I think I've ever witnessed in a video game. Sal Marcano shows no mercy, killing Lincoln's entire family and burning down his home. This was really hard to watch and even harder to listen to. The words used by Sal Marcano and Georgie during these killings make you so angry and sympathetic to Lincoln's eventual revenge quest. Lincoln doesn't just want to kill Sal Marcano. He feels because he denied Sal's request for him to run the Hollow that everything that happened here was his fault. So now Lincoln intends not to just run the Hollow, but the entire city, and break Sal Marcano's empire piece by piece, district by district. After narrowly surviving a full gunshot to the head, which let's just admit is a major plot convenience, but let's just move on, Lincoln is nursed back to health by Father James. He then returns to Sammy's burnt down bar to collect what's left of his gear before heading out to destroy Sal Marcano. I love how upon returning to Sammy's bar, they depict the trauma associated with this place with some horrible flashback imagery just to reinforce the idea that Lincoln is about to go on a full-blown rampage. Lincoln then proceeds to kill multiple district leaders and often puts their dead bodies on display in spectacular fashion, making a statement not only to Sal Marcano but to the entire New Bordeaux that a new boss is finally in town. The Ferris wheel kill being a personal favorite of mine. So yeah, the story in a nutshell is a revenge quest, but it is an expertly crafted one at that, defined and often elevated by its fantastic cast of multi-layered characters. Lincoln's quest gets him to join forces with 3 very distinct mob bosses that will help him take control of New Bordeaux's various districts. Cassandra, the feisty leader of the Haitians, Thomas Burke, the struggling alcoholic whose son got killed by Sal Marcano, and finally, my and probably everyone else's personal favorite, Vito Scaletta, exiled to New Bordeaux by Leo Galante after the events of Mafia II. Each of these characters are so well written that I simply wish they were utilized more throughout the narrative. Their scenes just flew by due to how much I enjoyed listening to them engage with one another. John Donovan also deserves his own separate video. His personality and eccentric flair created some of the best laughs and often much needed levity in a very serious story. He isn't just a former CIA agent who helps Lincoln with key information on his targets. He is a good friend, and a much needed companion that Lincoln can actually trust. Amongst all these allies is also one of the best villains of the entire series. Sal Marcano is a great, multi-layered antagonist written with a ton of nuance. He is afraid of what his crime legacy means for the safety of his own family and is in a constant state of dread for his own life, sleeping with one eye open every night, as he puts it. Even the most powerful man in New Bordeaux is afraid of the life he built for himself, knowing that no matter what he does, it will all eventually end up in flames. I especially love how while you're off killing Sal's various district leaders, the game will often cut back to Sal and Georgie hearing about the events Lincoln is causing in the city, and their reactions are often priceless. The sheer panic and painful realization that Lincoln is still alive, destroying everything Sal's built, is so rewarding. By the time you get to kill Sal, he has lost everything he holds dear. You witness as this high and mighty character breaks piece by piece, family member by family member. All that's left then is to have one final drink with Lincoln before accepting his inevitable fate.
Yes. Here we are. My son is dead, and I'm having a drink with his killer.
Lincoln's journey to get to Sal doesn't really involve much soul-searching or questioning whether what he's doing is truly morally correct, and it's often criticized by people online. My take is that I don't think Lincoln actually cares. He is a man of war. He's seen enough deaths and experienced enough trauma for multiple lifetimes. But I think, knowing that he was even slightly responsible for Sammy and Ellis's death is a cross too heavy even for him to bear. So Sal needed killing no matter the personal and emotional cost. By the end, the game gives you a couple of choices that all result in different endings for Lincoln. Continue to run New Bordeaux with your 3 mob bosses and essentially become the new Sal Marcano. Kill them and run it yourself, which funnily enough would have ended with you being assassinated by Father James of all people, or finally leave New Bordeaux behind. Disappear because your task here is done and you have nothing left to give this place. That's the option that to me personally felt right, and as a bonus, Vito gets to run New Bordeaux. Lincoln at this point has been through enough, and seeing him leave not only felt beautiful but poetic, and felt like the most perfect bookend to a grueling revenge story that I loved every second of. It really helps then when a strong narrative gets elevated by some of the best gameplay of the Mafia series by far. The gameplay and New Bordeaux. I actually like the gameplay of Mafia III. I know, it feels super surreal to say those words after genuinely finding the gameplay in both the other Mafia titles to be serviceable at best. Lincoln is an absolute freight train of a man, capable of bashing in heads and slicing necks with surgical precision. This dynamic approach to a character that can effortlessly switch between stealth and action made for a sandbox that was genuinely fun to mess around in. Lincoln feels like a true force of nature, capable of killing hundreds in mere minutes or silently taking them out from the shadows. Now some might see some of the things Lincoln can do, like the slow motion bullet fire, as overpowered, which makes sense especially coming off the back of the previous games that had characters with way less combat capabilities. But for me, it just enhanced the amount of fun I was having outside the main story. Now despite some unrealistic abilities, Lincoln can, especially on the higher difficulties, still die pretty quickly if you're sloppy. 2 or 3 gunshots is often enough to kill you, and when you get surrounded, things usually don't go your way. Mafia 3 shares a ton of similarities with other open world games in terms of the gameplay loop, reusing the wiretaps to reveal more of the districts, clearing zones, and ultimately finding the head boss of that district and killing them. It's very Ubisoft, and it's arguably one of the biggest critiques thrown towards this game. What makes Mafia 3's open world stand out to me though is how it takes those recognizable open world tropes like clearing bases and infuses it with a Mafia themed maturity. You aren't just destroying a bunch of generic enemy camps that have no personality like in Far Cry. Now here you're stopping white supremacists from selling literal slaves, destroying brothels that abuse and mutilate women, steal imported cars, and kill KKK leaders. Sure, it often amounts to the same repeated action of killing a bunch of guys in one location, and not every location is as detailed, but it really feels like the things you're actually doing in the open world would genuinely hurt Sal Marcano's empire. So strangely, despite being somewhat repetitive, the gameplay actually felt more meaningful to me, and its maturity also felt very true to Mafia. Its intense depiction of racism throughout the city also takes this game to a whole other level. You often see cops stopping interracial couples on the streets, and even responding faster to crimes in white neighborhoods. Certain stores are whites only, and you will often hear racist remarks thrown towards you as you simply walk the streets. It's an uncomfortably real depiction of the shocking reality black people faced back then. But it is also a powerful backdrop for a story like this. Never shying away from the truth of this period, I think, is this game's greatest accomplishment. In terms of New Bordeaux as a city, it feels less alive than I'd prefer, but more detailed than people care to admit. The city lacks any real sense of movement, and NPCs are somewhat lifeless, but when you slow down, it still has some of that iconic Mafia attention to detail that really defines this series. Bars have live musicians playing, diners have people gossiping, and certain sections of the map, like the French ward, have so much artistry packed into the architectural design. You even lose radio signal when you drive underneath a bridge, but as you explore New Bordeaux, these details are often missed entirely because you're often speeding from one objective to the next in rapid succession. Vehicles, as per usual, are fantastic. They feel great to handle and each one feels very distinct. I will say though, I do miss the intense vehicle destruction from Mafia 2, where one bad turn could completely total your car. Nevertheless, it's still great, and in my opinion, this game has the best radio out of all the games. I would play some of that music right now if I wasn't afraid of being copyright struck, but just trust me, there are some bangers in this game. So yeah, all in all, I'm pleasantly surprised with this gameplay, considering some of the horror stories I read online. But as usual, it isn't perfect. So with that being said, let's get into the lows. The repetitiveness, bugs, and bad design. Mafia 3's biggest problem is the repetitive nature of the gameplay. Clearing districts is fun, but after doing the same thing for the 100th time just with a slightly different coat of paint, it does weaken the overall impact this game could have had. Your mileage may vary, but as I mentioned, the maturity and Mafia theme of it all did make the process of these repetitive base clearances more bearable. My biggest gripe has to be with this game's intense padding, which could have been easily alleviated with some tweaks. The game often sends you to an objective that takes minutes to drive to, only to send you all the way across the map for the next objective, and then back again. Without any fast travel available in the game, this does seem like a total waste of my time, especially when what I will be doing at these locations when I get there will be very similar to what I just did at the location I'm currently at. Coming off the back of Mafia 2 and Mafia Remake that felt like they were carefully orchestrated to make the most of my time due to their linear structure, Mafia 3 does suffer from bad design and padding. A few tweaks like less things to clear in the districts and making the objectives flow more logically to one another without a ton of backtracking would have alleviated a ton of people's gripes with this game. My biggest hot take is that Mafia doesn't just work in a linear game, which is something a ton of people online seem to claim. I believe given more development time, more playtesting, more diverse side activities and less padding, Mafia could easily work as an open world title while still retaining its core single player focus. This was just the first iteration of it, and I would love to see them take another crack at it. But given the backlash, I don't think that will ever happen, which honestly is a shame. As per Hangar 13's track record, this game has a ton of bugs, albeit less than the other two actually. Tons of audio bugs where NPCs will be repeating the same line of dialogue over and over again, to tons of texture problems like here at Remy's Wake, where the bodyguards have low polygon versions of their outfits on. The world is very washed out, colorless, and it's really only in certain spots on the map or very linear story sections where the game shines visually. The sinking steamboat or Sal's deserted casino come to mind as examples where the game truly comes alive. Finally, I feel like the underboss system was very underutilized. It's a fantastic idea, and at the start your choices do feel important, having 3 underbosses to whom which you assign districts and as a result earn extra money and loyalty from them, but it never really amounted to much. The districts don't really change in any visually discernible way, so it's merely a game of who you like the most. Given more time, I think the system could really work well if the perks for each underboss were better, really forcing you to choose between loyalty or gameplay advantages, but as it stands, none of the perks really forced me to ever choose between anyone, and I like Vito, so I chose Vito most of the time. I don't know what to tell you guys, except that Mafia 3 really surprised me. It's a game of contradictions for sure. Flawed yet fascinating. Repetitive yet emotionally resonant. It may never be perfect, but its storytelling, daring racial themes, and some bold design choices really set it apart in ways that, in my opinion, deserve more recognition. Mafia 3, with all its imperfections, is a testament to how gaming remains such a subjective art form. When everyone loves a game, there will undoubtedly be someone that utterly despises it, and simultaneously, when everyone seems to hate Mafia 3, there will be someone like me that genuinely likes it. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like, as it really does help me, and subscribe if you'd enjoy a channel that, simply put, investigates some of your favorite games. And I'll see you in the next one.